My name is Mac McCraney. Um, I work with rural development as an area director, in which I cover South Louisiana. My offices are in Lafayette and Amite, Louisiana. As last when I spoke with you last time, we kind of advised that I know this is a disaster relief seminar or webinar, but with rural development, we don't really have in our direct housing, we don't really have a disaster relief, but we do have what we call affordable home buying. Before I go into that, I would like to say that we believe that rural development can, with rural development, you can build a town from the ground up. When I say that, we have business loans, we have community loans, we have housing loans. And in our community loans, we even work underground because we do water and sewer. With that being said, we can loan money for almost anything. But again, today we're looking at our housing program, and I'm going to speak on the direct house on a single family housing, and Miss Linda Broussard will give you some information on our multifamily housing. Uh, Now, I know that a lot of people may, and when I say single family housing, and I know I have some wise people on here, but sometimes when I say single family housing and multifamily housing, I have people come and ask me that I'm married. Do I get a multifamily housing loan or a single family housing? Well, no. When we say single family and multifamily, single family is an individual dwelling. Multifamily is more like an apartment complex. With that being said, we'll go on over to the next slide. So when we look at it, we talk about the dream. The dream, we feel that for most Americans, it is their dream to have home ownership. Well, rural development, we work with low and very low income. So in other words, we'll work with a group of people who can't go to maybe a bank or any other conventional lending institution, and we give them the opportunity to have home ownership. Um, so we feel that, we hope that we are making dreams come true with our program. Uh, Next slide. Now, I tell everybody, they ask me, what do we do with a home or what do we do? I make it very clear. There are three things we do with a home. We buy one that's already existing, we'll build one from the ground up, and or we will repair a home. Now, outside of that, I don't know anything else much that we can do to a home. But with those three things, we feel that we can help almost any individual. The beauty about our program is we go, sometimes I say the extra mile. In other words, we can do 33 years where most people do, where conventional lenders do 30. And in certain situations, we can even go up to 38 years. Now, with that, we also, not only do we have great interest rates, but also we subsidize these notes in some cases. Now, I will say that um, in all cases, the applicant will pay at least 1%. But right now, I think our interest rate is 2.5%. So that means that on a subsidy, it can be a possibility to where the applicant or the borrower will pay 1% of the loan, and the government will pay the other 1.5% to help cover that note. So again, we try to go the extra effort to give those who can't normally afford a home the opportunity. Uh, so how do we do this? Next slide. I say we believe we make it easy. One, we don't require no down payment, so it's 100% financing. We do work on monthly payments, but our program is based on two things. Our program is based on income and population. And when I say population, because we work with what we call rural areas. Rural areas is defined by rural development single family housing as areas where the population is 35,000 or less. So I said I cover South Louisiana, and for example, places that we cannot make loans would be one inside the in Orleans Parish. Orleans Parish is completely out. Inside the city of Baton Rouge, the city limits of Baton Rouge, inside the city limits of Lafayette, and inside the city limits of Lake Charles. Those areas right there would probably be the only areas in South Louisiana that we can't actually buy, build, or repair in. Um, Again, the closing cost is minimal, and sometimes it can be included in the loan. It all depends on the uh, appraised value. We also we do 100% financing, and we have no prepayment penalty. So if there's a opportunity to pay the house off early, then we do that. Again, I say we have two programs where we buy, we build, and repair. We have our 502 program, which is where you can actually build a house or buy one that's already existing. Uh, as I said, we subsidize. It goes up to 33 years. There's no down payment. There's no PMI or anything like that. So we work with that. Right now, our loan values are, I think we can go up to like $285,000. Now, if it's, so that's the appraised value or the cost, whichever one is greater. So in other words, that appraised value can't be over 285, and the cost can't be over 285. But outside of that, we can do that. So I tell anybody, don't be afraid to come in and talk with us. Don't be afraid. I will say that it's the government, and sometimes the paperwork can be scary, but we have a group of people that if you just talk with them, they can walk you through that process. Um, so now then we have what we call our 504 loan. Now that's our repair loan. The repair loan is one where you can borrow up to $20,000. Is 1% over a 20-year payback period. So in other words, if you borrow a full $20,000, your payment to rural development is less than $94 a month. And then if you're over the age of 64, then you can qualify for a $7,500 grant. Now, because of the rising costs in repairs and things like that, and I don't know if I mentioned it on the last, we can go up to $40,000 on a loan and $10,000 on the grant. So if you're over the age of 64, you can borrow up to $50,000 with a payback of less than $200. Now, with that being said, that the only way you qualify for that program is that you're in the very low income category. Now, I don't have the numbers on the incomes because it varies by parish, and of course, we have a bunch of parishes, and those numbers vary. They're just depending on where you are. So that's with that program. And I tell anybody, if you're talking about disaster or something, and you need to make repairs, and maybe that when you get the insurance money, you really don't have the you lose out because of the not the premium, but the what is that? Help me. It's on the top of my tongue. But the part there's whatever deductible. Thank you. Golly. But so and sometimes you might not have enough to cover. Well, we can probably step in and help you with that low interest loan. I also tell people, I think the 504 program that we offer is the only program I can probably know where you can borrow money and make money. And you say, well, how would I borrow money and make money? Well, I look at it. Let's say you're in a home and your electric bill is about $120 a month. Well, you can come in, borrow about a couple thousand, let's say $5,000, make your house energy efficient, where you fix all the windows and the doors and fix those cracks and creaks where air is coming in and going out, and you get double insulated windows to keep everything kind of cozy. You come in and you do that. So now you borrow $5,000, your payback to us is around $20 to $30. Well, your electric bill drops to $60 instead of $120. Well, now you're paying $60 less, and you're only paying us $30 to get to save that $60. So in actuality, now you're making $60 a month. that's the things that I think we can do, and we can really help some people, because when you talk about very low income, if they need a roof and that roof is $3, $4, maybe $5,000, they just don't have that lying around, but they can probably come up with a $25 payment. Now we do have limitations. We do have limitations on the grant. That's only used to remove health and safety issues. We can't beautify the home with a grant, but with a loan, you can do whatever you need to do. We typically don't add on to a home with our 504 program, but if it calls for it, for example, the family size increase and you had a 2-bedroom, and when you started off with that, you were very comfortable, but now that you've had kids and stuff, you need an extra room, then we can use that loan fund for that. But only reasons like that are maybe if now you need a handicap accessibility, so you need a little bit more room, then we can add on with that. But outside of those, we just do repairs on that home. So the next screen. Now we have what we call also a guaranteed home. Now the guaranteed program is a little different, because you will borrow the money from the bank, and the bank will be our client. And what the government is doing there, they're saying that they're willing to co-sign that loan for you. So we tell the bank that we're guaranteeing 90% of that loan. So in all actuality, the bank can only lose 10%. With that backing, that makes it easier for banks to consider more riskier people. Now, we are not credit score driven, but we do believe that you need to pay people back. We should be good stewards. We are charged to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. And when I say we think you should pay people back, when we look at your credit report and we see that you don't pay no one back, there's a strong possibility we're going to believe that you're not going to pay us back. But if you're doing your due diligence and circumstances happen in life, we work on that on a case-by-case basis. But I will tell any and everybody, if you have a 640 credit score, then you will qualify based on that as far as credit worthiness. But if it's below a 640, that doesn't mean that we can't help you. We look at the circumstances. Maybe you lost a job, and now that you're back on your feet, you're paying your bills, or something that life happened, and you ran into a hard spot, but now that you're back on your feet, you can pay your bills. We take those things into consideration. We do ask that you have dependable and stable income. So we look for you to be working for 12 to 24 months on the same type of job where we're showing that you do have a dependable income. And if you can show those things, then we can probably help you get a house. Again, the guaranteed loan, I told you on the direct side, we have a loan limit of $285. On the guaranteed loan side, there is no loan limit. It's based on your repayment ability. So that's what we have on the housing side. I will say, we'll look at the last slide there. When we look at that last slide, I've given a lot of information, but the most important thing for you to remember, there are 4 or 5 phone numbers listed on that last page. If you call any one of those numbers, and most of the time when you call an area office, which is in Monroe, Natchitoches, Lafayette, or Amite, you would have a prompt to hit 4, which will be single family housing. If you hit 4, all the things that I told you and more, I have a staff that is willing to assist and help you with any questions that you may have. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Linda just to talk about multifamily housing, and then we can look at taking some questions.
All right, Ms. Linda, it's deferred to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCraney, and thank you, Ms. Deborah, appreciate it. Again, my name is Linda Broussard, and I work for the now Field Operations Division Routine Servicing Team for Multifamily Housing. I am currently a team lead for Team 1 in the Routine Servicing Division. I currently oversee 571 properties in a total of 4 states, which includes Louisiana, North Carolina, Alabama, and Kentucky. Florida, actually, not Kentucky, Florida. But regarding multifamily housing and disasters, because this is what we're speaking about, disasters. For Louisiana rural development, there are 373 properties, rural development properties in the state of Louisiana. Again, just like Mr. McCraney mentioned, in that they are serviced out of the Lafayette, Amite, Natchitoches, and Monroe area offices. Because of this realignment of the multifamily housing program, the servicing specialist for those properties may not be housed in those area offices, but they are they may be in another state, but they are tasked with servicing those properties that are assigned in that area. A lot of emphasis has been placed on the letter of priority entitlement. You may have heard of this letter. It's called LOP for short. In the past, we have issued LOP letters to anyone that was affected by a natural disaster, no matter their circumstance. If they were living in a designated disaster area or parish, if they would call and ask, we would issue them a LOP letter. Now that LOP letter gives you, let me go back a little bit. That's what we used to do. Things have changed. Now, LOP letters will only be issued to tenants living in their assigned buildings that have become uninhabitable due to a natural disaster or other reason. This can be a localized disaster like a fire, a storm, or a ruling that your unit is uninhabitable due to code violations. That's the only way that rural development will issue you a LOP letter. If you are currently living in a rural development assigned apartment that has become uninhabitable due to a natural disaster or other reason. Now, FEMA issues registration letters to other displaced residents who do not live in rural multifamily housing properties. FEMA letters are equivalent to LOP letters in terms of certifying tenant displacement and may be used by non-rural housing multifamily displaced tenants. Now, this LOP letter gives you, this LOP letter and or the FEMA registration letter gives you priority on the waiting list of any USDA rural development financed apartment complex in the United States. It's not just in Louisiana or the state where the disaster happened. They are, you can use that letter, present it to the manager at any one of those 373 properties in Louisiana or any other state in the United States. And if you qualify, and if there are any vacancies, they will move you to the top of the waiting list. They won't, you have to qualify. In the owners, all of these apartments are individually owned and operated. Some people may call our office and say, I want to get on a waiting list. You don't get on the waiting list with rural development. You will get on the waiting list at a USDA rural development financed apartment complex. We have a list of rural development financed properties in the state of Louisiana. If anyone calls any of those numbers that Mr. McCraney showed on the last slide, you can all, the phone numbers that were listed for each area office, if you press 5, it's for multifamily housing. They will also be, they will all be able to give you a list of rural development properties in the state of Louisiana. However, if you would like a list in other states, you're going to have to go online to www.rd.usda.gov and search for rural rental housing and follow the prompts from there for other states. But as far as Louisiana is concerned, that's how we handle it here. After a disaster, property owners and management agents may request special actions and waivers that can be provided by the agency through their assigned servicing specialists, which includes waivers to allow for temporary housing of displaced persons who do not otherwise meet occupancy criteria. For an example, a family may temporarily move into a building with an elderly designation. We have family properties and we have elderly properties. Elderly properties are for elderly designated properties are for those individuals that are 62 years old or older or disabled. So you can be any age, any legal age, and be disabled and qualify for an elderly property, or you just have to be 62 years old or older. So as far as disasters are concerned, we really have to get the word out, especially to FEMA, because yes, even just recently with Hurricanes Delta and Laura, I personally issued over probably 125 LOPE letters to anybody and everybody that called and said that they were affected, negatively affected by the storm. I will not be able, or we will not be able, rural development will not be able to do that any longer. So if you do not currently live in a rural development financed apartment, you will have to register with FEMA. 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 You will have to register And if you are currently living in a rural development financed apartment, and if you then we'll be able to issue you a LOP letter. If you're not, FEMA is going to have to issue you a registration letter.
Ms. Lynn, I have a very pertinent question that just came up there. Can you explain a little bit more about the LOP letter? And I just understand based on your last commentary that some of the process, you'd have to be registered already with rural development to access those services. But can you break it down a little bit more about explaining the LOP letter and emphasizing what you just said regarding the change in process?
Okay. The LOPE letter is LOPE, which stands for Letter of Priority Entitlement. That letter for individuals that are currently living in a rural development financed apartment, and if there's a natural disaster and they are affected or their units have been determined uninhabitable because of the natural disaster, rural development can issue them a letter of priority entitlement, a LOPE letter. That letter gives you can take this letter and go to any USDA rural development financed apartment in Louisiana or any other state in the United States and present that letter to the manager or who's ever running the apartment when you get there, or even if you call, let them know your circumstance, let them know you have a LOPE letter, a letter of priority entitlement that was given to me by rural development. And if you qualify, they will give, and if there's they will give you priority on the waiting list. And if there's a vacancy and you are eligible, you will move in right away. They will give you priority on the waiting list and go all the way to the top of the waiting list. Even if there's somebody on the waiting list before you that does not have a LOPE letter. But if you come with a letter of priority entitlement, and if you qualify, they will give you priority on that waiting list and move you to the top. And then when there's a vacancy, they'll move you right in. They'll move you in ahead of everybody else that's already on the waiting list. Now, if you do not live in a rural development financed apartment that is determined uninhabitable due to a natural disaster, FEMA, you need to register with FEMA. FEMA will issue you a registration letter. That registration letter is equivalent to a letter of priority entitlement. If you do not currently live in a rural development property, rural development will not give you a letter of priority entitlement. You must register with FEMA, and FEMA will issue you a registration letter. That letter from FEMA is equivalent. It acts the same as a letter of priority entitlement. Are there any other questions?
Ms. Broussard, thank you so much for breaking that down. I mean, it could be very confusing at times, so I do appreciate you sharing that. It definitely indicates that there are options for folks that have certain circumstances. The other thing you mentioned is that if they don't currently live in a rural development property, that they would have to register with FEMA, but FEMA's registration letter would be equivalent to a LOPE letter.
That is correct. That is correct. And if I may, because of my experience during disasters and working with USDA rural development, when there are news reports of a pending disaster that's coming your way, my suggestion is to gather all your pertinent documents, get a copy of your lease, get copies, or make sure you have your Social Security cards, make sure you have your birth certificates for you and your children, anyone else that's living in your home. Gather all that information just in case you have to leave with no warning. You have documentation where you currently reside, because rural development will ask you, and I'm assuming, now, Deborah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, FEMA is going to ask you where you currently reside so they can document that. But if you have your documentation with you, you don't have to run around trying to contact your landlord. Do you have a copy of my lease? Do you have a copy of how much my rent was or is? So once you get word, as soon as you get word, oh my goodness, there's a hurricane in the Gulf, it's headed straight to Louisiana, start gathering those documents. Put them in an envelope. Make sure you have them at your fingertips, wherever you, don't let them out of your sight, because they will come in handy. Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Again, Miss Linda, thank you for looping that in. And we've got a hurricane season that's coming up within the next little over more than just a month here. And so gathering those documents are very valuable for folks to prove residency and have other important information that FEMA may need, as well as other recovery programs to help people expedite their needs. So I also added that in the chat room for people to kind of cut and paste to, and we'll be actually providing a little information session based on everything collected tonight so that other survivors can have opportunities for it. But having the copy of your lease, your Social Security, your birth certificates for you and your children, and also proof of that occupancy are very valuable information to have on hand.
Very, very valuable. And even schooling information for children. Even schooling information for children. Very, very valuable information. Thank you so much, Ms. Deborah. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, thank you for your attention, and I think Ms. Deborah is going to take it from here.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be just mindful to check the Q&A and also the questioning. I do have one last question that just popped up as we before we close. On the schooling information, Miss Linda, what would you recommend? Are you talking about copies of report cards or the grades that the kids are in? Copies of 504 plans, copies of IEPs. What are other documents that you recommend as for the schooling part for the kids?
I would get it all.
Get it all.
I really would. I would get it all. 504 plans, your report card, transcript. I would get it all. Just think about Laura and Delta, and even back to Katrina. You had individuals that that moved to California, that are in Iowa from New Orleans, because that's where they were brought. So be prepared. I would get it all from your children's school. I
And
would get it all. And actually, you know, those schools should be prepared when there is something out there pending that may come straight to Louisiana, that's in the Gulf. They should be prepared. So when parents start asking for that information, they can easily either email it to them or print it and give it to them. I would get it all.
yeah,
I would get it all.
I'm glad that you said that, because it's important if you want kids to recover and resume a normal routine. It's important to have all the information to expedite their transition to whatever that needs. So I know with 504 plans, I do know that they have to maintain those at the state level too, and copies of that. But I'm not sure if everything is included, because some kids may actually have maybe specific modifications or accommodations or even a behavior intervention plan. So it's important to make sure that you could compare a binder. I know scanning and technology is also helpful for many people in preparedness, to either upload those to a Google Doc so you have easily electronic access to them. But not all of us are techno savvy. So I think it's important to maybe in future planning to kind of make sure that folks that need that access has an opportunity to either download that to a flash drive or be taught how to access that from a different perspective. But you've heard it here tonight, Miss Linda and Mr. Mack telling you great information about USDA, and also providing you great tools and tips for this upcoming hurricane season. For you to prepare, for you to have valuable documents allows you to kind of move forward in your recovery as fast and expeditiously as possible, because it is a very traumatic time in losing everything.